What is up, all? A win is a win. That's it. A win is a win. Badgers win. They beat Penn State 63-60. We're going to talk about it. We got Rajeev on the show. He has some big picture transfer portal thoughts we're going to get into as well. Lots to talk about today on Locked On Badgers, plus your comments. Let's get it. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings. As always, really appreciate everybody tuning into the show. You all make this community what it is, and that's awesome. It's incredible. We're bringing Rajeev in, and we do every Tuesday with Rajeev, which I am humbled and fortunate to do. Rajeev, my friend, listen, a win is a win.
A win is a win. We'll take it. We're 4-3 in conference. We got to stay above 500. That's got to be the goal throughout the year. It's not pretty. I know we're going to get into it. We got a lot of problems, but W's a W.
That's it. We're going to get into basketball. But first, Rajeev hasn't been on in a minute. We've had several commits in the portal. We've done a lot of football since Rajeev has been on. So Rajeev wants to do some big picture here, transfer portal stuff. I'm all for it. But first, before we get into that, we are giving away a trivia contest today. I'd like to do these occasionally just to honestly say thank you for everyone who supports the show, for everyone who watches. So there is a trivia question. Winner gets this right here. This is a sealed box of Wisconsin Panini Badger cards. There's 2 autographs or memorabilia cards inside of this. Again, shipping is free. Whoever gets the trivia question gets it. It's just a way of saying thank you. We're going to do one part of the trivia question for each segment. So as soon as you get it in the chat, you win. Only one guess per person, though. That's the new twist we're putting on this. So you only get one guess. First trivia question is, I was a teammate of Michael Finley. Okay, remember that. You're going to get this second part of the trivia question coming up in the next segment. All right, Rajeev, I want to start here. You haven't been on. Braden Green committed. Again, this receiver room is incredibly deep now. I want to get your big picture thoughts on the transfer portal, zooming out a little bit, because we get hyper-focused on each individual player. Where are you at right now with the 13 players coming in?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, obviously continued excitement and continued level of, just how quickly the class is growing, how intentional we've been, and how we've addressed every need. First thing is, I like the fact that we're getting some experienced players now, right? So Bryson Green is a good experienced player. We have a lot of upside in this transfer portal class, but not a lot of guys that can start day one. Obviously, we have a few. We just got another one with Green, and that's really good. And I think we've said this before, that every single need that we have, he has filled that, with the exception, in my opinion, of nose tackle. But I feel like, and they're needs that we've never really gone out and got a lot of. We've got so many receivers in this room right now. I don't even know. We're going to talk about a little bit of a two deep in a little bit, and it's hard to really lay out what the starting lineup is going to look like next year, because there's so many players at certain key positions. The one thing that I would caution is I thought you did a great interview today with John Garcia Jr., just such a great mind in the world of recruiting. And the West is doing a lot. It's not just Wisconsin. So while I have certainly come on here and said, I think we're going to win the Big Ten next year, and I do still think we're going to win the Big Ten West, no problem.
Wait, you said Big Ten next year or Big Ten West next year?
I've said on this show, we're going to win the Big Ten.
Okay. I love it.
For sure. And I will stand by that. That being said, I do definitely think we obviously have to win the Big Ten West to do that. But it's not necessarily going to be as easy as we think it is, because, Hudson Card going to Purdue, which I've said in our group chat, I think he could be kind of like that sneaky, really, really strong quarterback in the West. And Sims, of course, going to Nebraska. There are teams that are doing a lot. Now, Minnesota's not one of them. They're going to be done. That's fine. But Iowa and Nebraska, I think that we're going to see some teams that they're going to cause problems Purdue. So we tend to focus on what Wisconsin's doing, which is great, and that's what we're going to do on this show every day. But the rest of the West is also stepping up, and the rest of the Big Ten is stepping up, which is a good sign for the conference. We want that competition, but overall, I think clearly, and I think John Garcia said it on today's show, is that we have the best transfer class in the Big Ten right now. I think by volume, he said Nebraska's was bigger, but clearly we've got that, and we're doing everything we need to do in that world. But yeah, I just love how intentional we're being, and I love that we're getting some experienced players now. We can say that Mordecai, Renfro, and Green are going to be day one starters. We know that, and that's pretty clear. And now you can actually tangibly look at the roster and say, what are the changes and the differences that we're going to see from last year to now? Well, now you've seen them on paper. You're actually seeing the holes get slotted in, not only in depth and not only in competition, but in the starting lineup. So really just so happy. I think the Bryson Green thing is massive for us to get a guy that played at Oklahoma State that has that kind of, I mean, he had to get 500, it's almost 600 yards receiving this year. That's great to bring to Wisconsin. He's instantly going to be at the top of that group. So really excited about overall big picture stuff.
Yeah, and Zach Bartz is the same thing. Kind of Fickle brought in a top 10 transfer class, number one class in the Big Ten for 247. He's been here for like 7 weeks. It's simply amazing. Rajeev, I want to go back to your point, but really quick, we have a guest, Darren Wyman. The answer is Rashard Griffin. I had more trivia hints for this. Averaged 17 points per game, played for 2 different coaches. But Darren crushed it on his first guess. It is Rashard. Darren, you win the box of Wisconsin cards, sealed up. You get 2 hits out of this. DM me on Twitter or on the Discord, whatever it is. Send me your address. I'll ship it to you for free. Again, thank you for supporting the show, Darren. Excellent guess, my friend. Wow, crushed it. I thought it'd be at least two clues for y'all to get that. All right. I want to go back to what Rajeev was saying because I think he made a very, very salient point with bringing in players that can help right now. And I thought Fickle has done a great job of balancing that, right? There's a bunch of players that are high upside guys, CJ Williams, Evers, Locke for kind of the future. But I think you could say Renfro, Huber, Maitre, the cornerback, both the edge defenders, and certainly Green are all basically win now players. And it's like you have this incredible balance of guys who are going to help next year and guys who are going to help for the next 2 or 3 years. He's just absolutely crushed it.
Yeah. Maitre is another good one in the defensive backfield that's going to be really big. I mean, that's an area that's shaping up kind of nicely with Blaylock coming back, and then Maitre. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people in that defensive backfield that are really going to kind of beef up what we're doing and provide a little stability defensively, where we focus clearly on the offense on a lot of these shows, and obviously based on what we brought into the portal. But we're still bringing on defensive people too, which is good to see.
Do you want to take a quick stab at the offensive 2 deep? What do you think? How do you think this is shaking out? And I think there's a couple spots here that are really interesting. And by the way, even the 2 deep is interesting, right? Because we're not in a 21 personnel anymore. We're talking 4 receivers now. We're talking
so
1 running
totally.
back. But
I did mine with 3 receivers and a tight end. That's kind of how I did my lineup. So obviously starters, I got Mordecai. I mean, we all know Mordecai's going to start. Braylon Allen. The line, I think, is pretty set. Jack Nelson, Wettig, Renfro, Bortolini at right guard, because now he doesn't need to play center because Renfro's in, and then Riley Mahlman. And then tight end, Cundiff.
Wait, really quick, who do you have at the other guard? I missed it. You have Bordeaux and who?
Wettig.
Okay, I think that's an interesting one. I think that's a battle there for Wettig.
Yeah.
But
and then Clay Cundiff at tight end, and then the receivers. My first 3 are going to be Green, Chimere DK, and Skylar Bell. That to me is the starting receivers. What do you agree with or disagree with there on all that?
Yeah, I think you basically nailed it. Except for I don't think Wettig starts at guard. I don't know if it's going to be Furtney. I don't know if it's going to be Huber. I just don't feel like he fits really well into it. And then take it a step further, we're getting further away from like we're going to be in a phone booth and beat you to death offense. Mm-hmm. And I think that's more what Wettig is. I mean, that's really kind of his game right now. He's not quite as quick. He's not quite as swift-footed. I think you could see Furtney there, like I said. I think you can see Huber there. Maybe even Joe Bruner there. I don't know. That's going to be a battle. I think everything else, I think you're dead on. The receiver is just going to be interesting, right? Maybe CJ Williams comes in there. Maybe Keontae steps in there. I don't know. But I think you're pretty much dead on with everything, except I think that guard spot isn't going to be Wettig.
Yeah, I think I put Bruner in my 2 deep in the guard, as well as and Furtney, of course. Furtney, I think, is kind of like the 6th man, right? I mean, he's the guy that if something happens to Renfro, Bortolini's the backup center on the way I have it, and then Furtney would step in at guard. So yeah, I think there's a lot of movement there, but it's really interesting to see what Huber does and where he slides into that line. I mean, he certainly can play tackle. He can play guard. I think he's a little versatile there. So I'd like to see kind of where he goes. But what do you think about receivers? I mean, do you feel like Green, DK, Bell, and then who would you put at number 2? Who are the next 3 wide receivers?
Yeah, so if we're going with those 3, I think it's a really good guess, by the way, for the top 3. You and I have talked about Bell a lot. We're both big fans of Bell. Chimere's a veteran at this point. Green is stepping in right away. So I think that's your top 3. I think that next 3, it's going to be CJ, Tretch, and Keontae. I think that's your next 3. Although, no. I'm going to change it already. I'm going to go CJ, Pauling and Keontae. I think Pauling is ahead of Tretch.
I put CJ Keontae and actually Quincy Burrows. I think Quincy Burrows could step in and do well. And then I've got Pauling, Marcus Allen, and Kekahuna kind of like sort of on the outside looking in. But obviously, I mean, we just listed 9 guys that can play wide receiver at Wisconsin. When have we ever had 9 guys that we can legitimately say, yeah, any of those guys can play receiver at Wisconsin? That's nuts.
And by the way, we're not even talking Vinny Anthony, whose film I really liked coming out of high school. There's other players, Chris Brooks, who people were raving about in bowl practices, and is the son of a receiver that made it to the NFL. His dad played in the NFL. Like there's so much depth at this receiver spot that Badger fans are going to have to take a second. And Matthew Brower talks about it right here. Our receiver room is deep. Badger fans are going to have to take a second and understand that there's players in this group that we really like that are going to transfer. And I have no idea who that is. But we're going to see that and we're going to be like, oh, no, but you can't keep all this talent without playing it. And you have too many bodies to fully play here.
Totally. Well, interested to get your thoughts on one other thing is who you feel like is going to be, I mean, just crystal ball right now, Buffalo game next year. Who's our backup quarterback?
I think it's Locke. You
think so?
I think so. This is an interesting one to me. And I'm glad that we're wrapping up on this with the 2D because I really want your take on this. I want, in the comments, I want your takes on this too. I think Locke comes in with more of a higher floor. He's been in this type of system his whole life, going back to high school. He was a big-time recruit for Leach, who knows what he's looking for in a quarterback. I think he comes in as a better passer than Evers. I think he comes in as a safer passer with more physical tools than a guy like Chase Wolf. I think he might be your number 2, which then may set him up to springboard into 24 with a little more experience. And people have written off Locke, right? Because they're so enamored with Evers and the dual threat package. I'm telling you right now, Locke is going to be in this battle. And I think he might be your number 2 this year, which springboards him potentially into the next season.
It's a good call. He's listed in the next line for me. I actually think that on day 1, that Chase Wolf's actually going to be the backup, only because of his experience. I'm not saying Chase Wolf is better than Evers or Locke. No one, mistake me for saying that. But I do just feel like, he's got a lot of years. He played well in the bowl game. He deserves credit for that. He's coming back. I think he will be listed as number 2. But then, so my number 2 is Chase Wolf / Nick Evers, because I think Evers will supplant him, of course, and be the number 2 guy. But Locke, obviously a bit more of a pocket passer. We know that, but you're right. He brings a little bit of a different level of experience. But look, I think when I look at Longo's system and everything that I've watched from things at North Carolina, I feel like Evers is kind of tailor-made for that down the line. So I believe Evers is going to be the guy that springboards forward. But I mean, it's going to be good. It's going to be cool to see which one of those guys is getting more reps. And obviously spring ball is going to have a lot to show us as well with how it looks.
Yeah, I mean, we're taking kind of stabs in the dark here, which is intuition, gut, thought. But it goes back to your receiver point, right? There's a lot of options now. And that's a good thing. Like, there's multiple ways this story, this is like choose your own adventure books. You remember those? There's multiple ways this choose your own adventure can go that work out pretty well for Wisconsin fans. And we just haven't been in that position at quarterback or receiver in a long time. It's pretty exciting, honestly. All right, we have to take a quick break here. Go to some friends of our show. We're coming back. We're talking basketball. Wisconsin just got a win. We led off with it. We said a win's a win. We got to talk about it because it's a pretty big win to get kind of off that losing snide. We're coming back with that and Rajeev. But first, today's show is brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, lines, odds than ever before. We've talked about some of the ways I use BetOnline. I go to the futures, right? So I can put some money on my favorite teams. I bet with my heart, not my head. I've talked about that. But listen, that heart has led me to put some money on the Niners to win the Super Bowl. And that Purdy train is choo-chooing down the tracks, y'all. So that might turn out okay for me. Of course, my son's bet to win the finals may turn out equally disastrous. But I enjoy it. Do responsibly. We go to BetOnline to do this. It is the industry standard. It's what we use. Grab your mobile device. Head to the website today. BetOnline, where the game starts. And with that, thank you everybody for tuning into Locked On Badgers. Y'all make this what I think is quickly becoming one of the best Badger communities on the internet with the podcast and the Discord. I really, truly do appreciate all of y'all. So thank you so much for tuning in, watching the show, supporting it. I really do appreciate it. If you like the show, hit the subscribe button. It's one of the best ways to support us and support what we're doing here. And then when you're done here, go check out Locked On College Basketball. All the biggest college basketball stories in one day on the Locked On Network, Odyssey, YouTube, wherever you find your stuff. All right, let's get Rajeev back on here. Rajeev, let's talk basketball. I want to start off with the good. Let's go to game balls, and then we're going to kind of go through some user comments and some of the stuff that maybe frustrated you. Who gets your game ball for this? I mean, I think this one might be kind of obvious, but it's worth talking about for sure.
Absolutely. Steven Crowell has stepped up so much in the last few weeks, especially without Tyler Wall. Obviously, happy that Tyler came back tonight, but dude, that guy is becoming a man in the paint, and I love the aggressiveness. Now, we've talked earlier on the show, like maybe a couple months ago when the season started, we were very critical of his lack of, post presence, and he wasn't really doing a lot. I didn't think he was playing up. He was going up strong. Wow. Is he doing that now? He is taking ownership in the lane, and he's doing a great job of that. I mean, so the guy had 21 points tonight, 9 of 16 shooting. I mean, what more can you ask for? We need that. Obviously this team struggles to score offensively. We can talk about that until we're blue in the face. But this guy's at least someone who's putting the ball in the bucket on a consistent basis, and he's not afraid to do it. We know he's a good passer. Would have liked to have seen him make a few more passes out of the paint, but wow, no one else gets the game ball. He has done a fantastic job. We need more of that if we're gonna continue on with the season and do well.
Yeah, 100%. Thomas Miller, who watches a lot of our shows, appreciate you, Thomas, says game ball Crowell. Vast Sleep says Crowell has been very surprising lately. He plays stronger in the post and plays with a calm presence.
Yep.
5 of the last 6 games, Crowell scored at least 17 points, multiple 20-point games in that stretch. He is really, in this last stretch of games, as you mentioned, Rajeev, coming to his own. We talked early in the season, and I talked about how post players, if you don't have it at the beginning of the year, you usually don't develop it in season. Like, it's hard to get all those reps in practice. But he has gotten, and to Vast Sleep's point, he's been playing calm in the post. I was a point in the game today where I was almost yelling at the screen, like, give it to Crowell in the post and just space out around him, because Penn State couldn't stop him for a long stretch there. And it felt like we got away from it almost when there was no reason to, right? Just keep feeding the beast because they can't handle him. And the great thing with Crowell is he's a great passer. So if they start doubling, if they start hedging, he's going to find open shooters on the perimeter. And I wish they would have gone to it more. I think he could have had 25 tonight if they fed him.
Yeah, you're right about that. And I think better spacing around him would open those passing lanes for him. And also maybe some cutters on the backside would be nice to see when he's in there too. I do think that sometimes look, I'm all about the feeding the ball into the post, but when everyone just stops moving, I don't like that either. I want to see, like, you can move on the perimeter. You can get guys open. You can even just sliding towards the baseline when your defender might be looking into the lane. Creating a passing lane for him to throw to, I think, would be good, and some backdoor cuts. But yeah, I mean, Crowell's was fantastic. And again, let's talk about Connor Segian. Justin is going to love that when he hears this. The guy is still he's crushing it, and I know that you disagree with me here, but I'm very, very happy that he's in the starting lineup. Very, very, very happy. Couple things on that. First of all, I know he didn't necessarily score early, but the team did, and I believe that has something to do with Connor in the game, because defenders instantly have to just pay attention to this guy. No one ever lets him out of their sight, and that opens up the floor for other players. I think that he got 33 minutes in this game. It's the most minutes I think he's had all season. Now, I know Klesmit was out, and I think that contributed to it. And I think, but Jordan Davis got 29 minutes. That wouldn't have happened if Klesmit had not gone out in the first half. So I told you a few weeks ago that I thought that he would get more minutes if he started, simply because of the nature of starting. And he did that tonight. I want him on the floor more because he creates that threat. And man, he has such a laser from 3. He has such a quick release. He's not afraid to do it. Had to get 10 points tonight, and that's fine. I mean, he did okay. He wasn't perfect, but that's what we want him to do. And I'm 100% on board with him starting the rest of the season. And I know you're going to refute that.
Well, it's funny. I thought you were going to lead into this, so I actually put Jan's comment up. Much needed win from Jan Volk. Got CE starting. Now the coaches have to devise ways to get him open shots other than cutting through the lane. I want to go back to your point, and then I want some comments on this too. What do you all think that for the 120 that are watching right now, and the people who watch it later, put it in the comments. Do you want Connor Segian starting? And before you answer that, Rajeev gives you the thumbs up. My thoughts on this was always, it's not so much that I don't want him starting. Like, I'm totally cool if he starts. My thought process was more, I don't think it solves the problems, because now you're taking the only scorer from the bench. I feel like you're solving a problem in the starting lineup, but you're creating one where now nobody scores off the bench. So I really don't, it's not so much I have a problem with him starting. I don't think it solves the problems offensively that I guess a lot of people do. I think that's more my stance.
Well, I would say that tonight, I think I saw a few different things with him in the starting lineup. So one of the things that I saw was he was playing a little inside out game with Crowell. He was on the strong side, throwing it into Crowell, which gave him the option of kicking it back out. There were a couple times where Wall did not kick it back out to Esigian that I thought he should have. So I like that. I like him being on the strong side. I said that last week when we talked about it. I don't really like him always being on the weak side like that. So put him in a position where he can quickly get a pass back out from the post and take a shot. But yeah, so I think he's going to, the evolution is still going to happen with him, creating more action for them and getting him more open shots. But with him in the lineup, it just, you get that kick started at the beginning and you give the defense something to think about right off the bat versus when he's on the bench. Let's face it, we struggle scoring and you're really just focusing your attention on the paint. But now you have Crowell, you have Wall, and you've got this guy lurking around the perimeter that at any moment can drain a three very, very quickly. And that just, it opens things up.
See, I agree with that point, right? Like the team scores more with Esigian on the court. Esigian on the court, he's a more efficient scorer than most people on the team. Again, the only problem I have though is I don't think the opening, I guess the crux of my argument is, and we're both going to die on these hills, so we'll move on after this maybe, but I think the crux of my argument is I don't think those opening minutes are any more important than minutes in the middle of the game. I just want him to get starting minutes. If he plays 33 minutes, which by the way, I think he did last game off the bench. I think this is his second 33-minute game, I believe. But as long as he gets starting minutes, that's really all I care about. But your point may also be completely correct that he's more likely to get those minutes if he starts. So, I definitely see the perspective you're coming with. Again, for me, I think fans, and I'm not saying you're doing this, I think fans, if we're from a big picture, tend to overvalue the beginning and end of games. And the middle of the games, those minutes in the middle of the game are really equally as important. And now you're going to kind of take him out of those pots and put him in others. I just think the bigger problem on this team, and I think you might agree with this, is we just don't have enough scores in general. So we don't have enough scores to stretch over 40 minutes through 5 starting spots. And that's really the bigger problem than whether Esigian is starting or not, from my perspective.
Very true. We definitely don't have that. And I would argue that, he does, being on the beginning also kind of helps guarantee he's in at the end, which I like that too. There were early games when guard wasn't putting him in at the end. He has been recently, but I just want him to be more in like consistently in the lineup. That comment that you had up before, I don't know, I'm not sure where it went. This is another point that I wanted to bring up, and this guy brought it up. I think it was Thomas something. He brought up Isaac Lindsay. I would like to bring up Isaac Lindsay a little bit, of someone on the good side of things. I know he only had a couple points tonight, but I really like the minutes that he had. He tends to bring some poise into the lineup, which I really like. Now, I want Kamari McGee to be really successful, and I wish he could play more and be better. But I really like Isaac Lindsay, and I think that he does have a shot. I think he had a couple nice, good mid-range shots today that I liked. He took a 3. I think he took a 3. He did take a 3. He missed it. But I like that. I feel like he brings calm in. And you know what? I'm actually comfortable with him coming in and running the point when Chucky's not in there. I feel like I think we've talked a couple times, and I'm not sure how confident you are where you are at with Lindsay, but I want to see him play more. His minutes have been increasing slowly. I'm okay with him getting 15, 18 minutes if that's where he is, because he can shoot the ball. He brings calmness. He doesn't really turn the ball over. I really like what he brings to the team. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, he's really interesting to me. And I put the comment from Thomas back up with Lindsay in there, where he said he likes Lindsay off the bench instead of Kamari a little bit. Yeah, Lindsay plays with a type of confidence that's similar to Connor. He doesn't have the same type of stroke or quickness, but he's willing to kind of take it off the bounce, take a fade away. He had a really nice mid-range shot today. The only problem with Lindsay is when when guard tried to play him at point early in the year, teams kind of ate him up. Like he's not quick enough, or his ball handling isn't strong enough to, in my opinion, run the point. And this again speaks to the depth, because Kamari hasn't been able to earn those minutes either. So now you're really getting back to the point of picking the lesser of two evils. I do agree with your point that Lindsay brings a certain type of confidence into the game. He's able to get into some spots against defenders that maybe aren't eating him up and hit some open shots. So I like that. He's enough size to compete as well. He's a little taller than Kamari, obviously. It's another spot where we're just really limited. Quite frankly, we don't have a good backup point guard right now. So Lindsay might be the better of those two options. We do have to take a quick break. We got to jump into our other friends of the show. And then the last segment here is just going to be responding to comments, maybe get into a little more football talk. But It's kind of free form. We got a bunch of comments we want to talk about, probably get more into the game as well. We got Rajeev on here, keep him as long as possible. But we're going to take a very quick break for our friends of the show, and we're going to get back into responding to all your comments. All right, let's bring Rajeev back on. I do want to say thank you again to everybody who tunes into this. These shows are a ton of fun. We got a bunch more content coming up. It may not be tomorrow now, but we have a really fun interview coming up with a Badgers new coaching staff member. That's going to be a lot of fun. We have John Garcia coming up as always. We got a basketball recruiting insider coming up. A couple at least one transfer portal player we got is coming up. Just a lot of content. So y'all going to want to stick around for that. And again, as always, every Tuesday we get Rajeev on. Let's take some comments here. I do want to, while I'm getting a comment, one of my other frustrations with the game, and I want to kick it over to you, Rajeev, and see how you felt like this. You can't have a first half, whether he starts or not, where Connor has 4 shots.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, there's got to just be more in the game plan for him. There is no reason. I mean, you obviously coach basketball. A lot of us, I played basketball when I was growing up. I just don't understand why they can't get better looks for him. Look at Penn State's guys. They were shooting threes left and right, and their best 3-pointers, the best guys were taking them. We have to screen more. We've got to get some motion on going on the baseline. We've got to get him involved in a pick and roll, high low. There's so many options to get him more shots, and they just don't do it. There were a couple times where I mentioned earlier where, I thought that Wall and Crowell didn't really look to pass out sometimes. They were focused on in the lane. Overall court and kind of lane awareness, I think, was a bit lacking today. Wall had a couple of shots blocked. I think maybe even 2 or 3, because I know he was trying to get back into the swing of things, and he was trying to to feel the game out and let the game come to him. But he could have been a bit more crisp in finding the passing lanes. And I think that's part of it too, is when we get it inside, we got to be quick and getting it back out, especially when Connor's, he seems to be moving well without the ball. He's trying to find open spots. Let's get him the ball more and get him more shots. We have to do a better job of that. And once again, last shot going into halftime, we all knew what was going to happen. Fade away, Chucky Hepburn. There we go.
Listen, Darren Wyman, my main complaint, the whole world knew Chucky was taking the last shot before half. That is all. Everybody knew it. It honestly wasn't a terrible look, but it's so frustrating at times.
But they never go down. They never go down.
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, a contested mid-range fadeaway is not a high-efficient shot. So I just said it was a pretty good look, but those aren't high-efficient looks. I mean, I guess I'm saying he created some space. He got a semi-open look. But yeah, I know that frustrates a lot of people. I have several comments in here. Beat Davies, I'll just use his. Tyler Wall's clearly not 100%, yet his appearance on the floor was the difference in the game. Mm-hmm. He does bring so much to the team, just in terms of defense rotations, toughness, and if nothing else, I think this is important. I think this is an undervalued part of his game. You can throw it to him, and defenses react, and they collapse, and they move. They respect his game more than just about anyone else, especially when he's in the post on the Badgers. And that creates some opportunities for other players. So I think that's an underrated aspect of his game that he does bring to the table. Even when, because to your point too, he had 2 or 3 shots blocked. He clearly is not 100% in this game.
Yeah, he obviously is very athletic down there, and he makes really good post moves and really finds very interesting ways to score the bucket. And he wasn't himself today, but that's okay. He's been out for 3 games. He's not really in game fitness yet. He's going to take a couple games to get back into that. But he contributed 5 rebounds tonight, 1 block, 1 steal. He's always been a guy that can, that lights up the stats in many ways. Very critical piece. And it's not just a surprise that, the 3 games he was out, we lost. It's pretty, it's pretty clear that he's a pretty big part of our team.
Here's one here. Several comments about recruiting or depth or the rotation, not having players. A lot of it comes back to recruiting. Bo Dragon says, if you don't have a backup point guard, your recruiting sucks. Thoughts on Greg Gard as a recruiter in general? This is an interesting conversation, and we could do a whole show on this probably, but what's your overview here on this type of comment?
Yeah, so first of all, I think that what Luke Fickell is doing is spilling over into the basketball program, because now we've seen what that can be, and now it's kind of like making this look a little bit worse. And so you're seeing more parallels being drawn from Greg Gard to Paul Christ versus before, and I think that's because of what Fickell's doing. I don't think he's a bad recruiter. I think that he's had some weak classes, which I think is the big thing. When you miss on a class, you're gonna suffer for a few years. Based on what we have coming in next year and potentially Freitag coming in 24, which would really help solve those issues. I think I'm going to give him a pass on this and say, look, next year's class with Winter and with Yalden, we should have a really good class coming in and really strong athletes. So I'm okay with him as a recruiter. That being said, there needs to be continued improvement in this field, because if we fall down the rung in the Big Ten, then that's going to be telling. But so far we haven't. Every year we outperform what we're expected to do. And that's because he's a good coach. He's put in a system that was basically Bo Ryan's, that he's moved forward. He's done a good job. He's bringing in good guys. We're making the tournament pretty much every year. We really can't complain about that. So I'm okay with it, but there has to be improvement and we have to keep moving forward. Otherwise, we might have some issues down the road.
Yeah, can I say too, doesn't it feel like kind of a double-edged sword to continually say we outperform expectations? Like, why are your expectations to finish ninth overall, right? I don't know. I think there's some weird parallels here, and I don't want to dive too deep into it this show, because I just want to be on the record. I don't think Greg Gard should be on a hot seat. He won the Big Ten last year. I think he does a lot of things really well. I do, however, think there's some weird parallels to Greg Gard and Paul Chryst. Paul Chryst from a couple years ago, where I thought you could start to see a few tiny cracks in the foundation.
Yes, and I feel like that's been highlighted again more based on what's happening at the football program right now, for sure. But consistency is everything, especially in this sport. We make the tournament every single year. We are a threat to make the Sweet 16 every single year. Most college football basketball programs, cannot say that. Most college basketball programs cannot say that they compete for a conference title every single year. We have won lots of Big Ten titles. We've won lots of Big Ten tournaments. We have nothing to complain about as Badger basketball fans, in my opinion. But have to keep moving forward. He is not on the hot seat. He is a good coach. I don't want him to go anywhere. I do want to see better athletes in general join this program. And because when you have the consistency that he has, I'm sorry, I'm going on about this, but when you have the consistency that he's built, you get a couple good athletes, you can make a Final Four run. Bo Ryan did that, right? We've done that in the past. So there's no reason to think we can't. And if we can compete and get to potentially one Final Four every 10 years, which is what we've basically done, hey, I'm fine with that. And a lot of teams can't say that.
I'm only smiling because everything you're saying is correct. But if I were to go back 2 years and say, if Paul Chryst could just get a quarterback and we could get to one BCS game every 10 years and the consistency he's built, and if we just had a couple more athletes, and a lot of Big Ten or a lot of football teams would love to be us. I feel like you are literally that diatribe with Greg Gard, which I agree with, by the way, Rajeev. I'm in your court on this, but playing devil's advocate, that statement you just made, literally, I feel like it is Paul Chryst in 2020. Badger fans talking about Paul Chryst.
But the difference is this basketball program has actually done it. We've won a lot of Big Ten championships, and we've been to the Final Four 3 times since I've been a fan. I know it wasn't Greg Gard. I know that. But we've had that success, and we've been right there every time. Now, Paul Chryst had a lot more, we didn't really see it. And we both have talked about Yalden and Winter, and we believe that we can be successful with those guys. So I think he's on a little bit higher step than where Paul Chryst was, but your point is well taken, and that's fair. And I realize now that I played right into that narrative. So
I wasn't even trying to. It's interesting. I think we should do a whole show on it. I think it's fascinating, to be honest. But let's move on a little bit. Get more comments before I derail it any further. Tim mentions you mentioned Winter and Yalden. Tim mentions Winter and Yalden are going to help a lot with offensive scoring depth. I assume Winter will come off the bench. I think we both like these two dudes. I think Yalden's going to help right away. I think Winter is skinny. I don't know if Winter is going to play a big role right away as a freshman, Rajeev, but I think he has the higher upside. I think Yalden's going to play right away, and he's going to frustrate the hell out of the rest of the Big Ten. He's a stud.
Yeah, I think Winter needs to hit the weight room a little bit, and he's going to be focused on that probably his first year, but then, he's going to come on pretty quickly after that, and I think he's going to be a huge impact player for us for many years to come.
Commandant Klink says, I agree, Gard should not be fired, but it's frustrating he can't get better athletes here. Yes, that is a very accurate statement.
Yep. That's pretty much the main story, right? That's exactly what's wrong with our program.
Yep, athletes in depth. I 100% agree. Jake Ryan says Paul Chryst didn't win the Big Ten or Coach of the Year. Paul Chryst did win 2 Big Ten Coach of the Years. Let's be fair here. Paul Chryst is a 2-time Big Ten Coach of the Year. Now, you are correct, though, Jake. He did not win the Big Ten Conference. Of course, he is dealing with he is also dealing with Ohio State football, whereas there's no Ohio State football version of a basketball Big Ten program.
I mean, I would say that Greg Gard winning the Big Ten is a huge accomplishment. I know we don't have an Ohio State necessarily, but we've had teams like Purdue, we've had Illinois, we've had a lot of good teams in the conference, and we're able to win it fairly consistently over the last 10 years. So I think he gets a lot of credit for that, which is why he has a lot more capital in the bank, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I would never, and I don't ever intend to diminish a Big Ten regular season title. That's an incredible accomplishment,
Huge.
period. No caveats. 100% agree with that. Ryan Robin mentioned some of our bench guys shouldn't be playing basketball in D1. I don't know if I'd go there, but doesn't it feel, Rajeev, like there's 4 or 5 guys, and I don't want to be – there's 4 or 5 guys who definitely don't seem this year ready to compete in the Big Ten on the bench that are scholarship players.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't want to, don't want to talk bad about players because I know these guys are giving it their all. But yeah, we just don't have the depth. We don't have the team. We don't have the athletes. And, this is not a Big Ten regular season championship team. I'm sorry to say that. I was hoping that I was going to be wrong about that earlier. We were going to find a way to compete. We might still compete for part of the year, but we just simply don't have it. I think we'll have it in the next couple of years. We've got a lot of people with obviously Connor is going to be so good for years to come. And there's a lot of people coming in that I think we'll be excited about. This program is going to grow, but yeah, we just don't have it. We're not there right now. And as much as it pains me to say it, I had said that I thought we could definitely get to Sweet 16, and you had said I was wrong. And I think you're probably right. I think we'll get to the tournament. I think we have to get to the tournament. We need to focus on that. You got to finish above 500 in your conference to get there. I mean, generally speaking, and I think we can do that.
Yep, I agree. And listen, I'm certainly hoping to be wrong on that. If they go on some magical run, they're the Sweet 16. Rajeev, you and I will be on here doing therapy shows, cheering like madmen. So I hope I'm wrong. I just don't see the depth. Alien Space, who's been on the show since the jump, really. I wish Gard recruited better depth. I think that really is the crux of it, right? Like, he does so many things really well. I think, Rajeev, you and I would agree with that. It just, we need a little better depth and a little more athletes. It's almost like the foundations here, we just want him to update some of the furniture, right? Update some of the stuff around it. But I think he's a good coach. I agree with you there. Rajeev, we're getting a little long here. I think we hit a good portion of comments. But want to kick it over to you. Any last thoughts, whether it's the transfer portal stuff we talked about, the 2 deep, the basketball game we just saw, put it in your court here.
Yeah, for basketball, I think we need to figure out our foul shooting. Our free throw shooting is absolutely atrocious. I think we were 10 of 16 today, maybe. Yeah. I can't remember the last time a guy got up there and made both free throws. I mean, I think Chucky did it once today. That has got to change. We need to fix that because we've won a lot of close games, but we are going to lose a lot more close games if we cannot shoot better from the charity stripe. So that's got to be something that gets corrected right away. And that there's really no reason for that. There's no excuse for that. Depth isn't a problem. There's no reason that should be one of our Achilles heels. Yeah, it's the last thing I really wanted to say.
Yeah, 60-something% this year. It's a bad free throw shooting team this year. And that was never a hallmark of Wisconsin teams, right? We always shot pretty well from the line for the most part, outside of an Ethan Happ year or two.
Yeah, right. One more thing I did want to mention. I'm glad this Darren Wyman brought it up, which I read this on 247 today. Yeah, listen, we've talked about Jamel Howard a lot on the show. If we can get Jamel Howard at this program, it will just be the cherry on top of this entire transfer portal recruiting season. He's gonna sign on signing day in February. If he signs with us in February, I'm telling you, that is just what a win that would be. That man is a monster. He's huge. Yep. He's going to be a great nose tackle. You know how much I love that position. So I'm here for it. I love that I read that he's been talking to him like every couple days. I mean, Fickle's doing everything we want him to do. He's doing everything we want him to do.
His energy is incredible. And I've talked about Jamel Howard. Darren, thank you for the comment on Howard. I think people are sleeping on how big of a recruiting win Howard would be. This is a guy that LSU's after, Ole Miss is after, Michigan's after. I think Auburn was in on him as well. Like this is a 4-star high school defensive lineman, not in state. It would be an incredible recruiting win and fill a gigantic need. By the way, if you want to go back and watch the film, this is a 320-pound dude who moves. He doesn't just lean on people. He would be an incredibly big recruiting addition. So I hope
this guy's got NFL talent written all over him. I mean, he's going to be in the league, and he needs to be a Badger. Oh boy, does he need to be a Badger! It would be so fun to watch him.
And the offer list reflects that. Commandant Klink says if they can get Jamel Howard, the grade would be an A+ for the recruiting class. A couple rapid fire comments here because I always want to try to get to them. Listen, I read every comment y'all ever have. By the way, I don't always get to respond to them because I have too much now, but. If you take the time to put something on the show, I always try to get to it because I really do appreciate y'all. Ryan says, make the shows 1 hour. I enjoy this. I always feel like I'm keeping people too long, to be honest. I don't know if that's weird or not. Let's do
I like it, Ryan. 1 hour shows. There we go.
Listen, we're going to be doing Freeform Fridays where those are probably going to go an hour. And I'm going to let people are going to call in and we're just going to, we may chill longer on those shows. Daltreed says, I remember when we used to make more free throws than the opponent took. Remember that. Those were fun times. Let's see. Do we got any more last ones here? A lot of randomly, Alondo Tucker has taken over the chat for some reason. A lot of Alondo Tucker references. We're not gonna go
there.
That's a whole show. Honestly, we could do on Alondo Tucker for many reasons. Jan Volk says yes for the 1 hour show. We'll think about it. I think we'll let Fridays kind of go until the chat dies out. I think that might be the plan. We're gonna do Freeform Fridays, make it live. But with that, Rajeev, thank you as always for tuning in. Everybody in the chat, thank you all so much. I really do appreciate it. Darren, you won the card, so don't forget to send me your address. I'll get that sent out to you. And with that, on Wisconsin, and let's keep it going, right? We got a 1-game winning streak. Let's go.